in the insurance industry, and I know we have worked with her over the
He's
years.
my insurer too. Yep.
That's right. So, with our properties here in Florida, she's who we put our insurance with. She's an investor friendly insurance broker, and that's one of the reasons you need to know her because she's in touch and investor friendly. So, anything else before we get started?
So Colleen does a lot of kind of public sharing information. She speaks at our meet at the CFRI and a lot of other events around as well. And she's kind of the go-to person. What is it, Tom? Tom calls you the insurance magician or something like that. So
Oh yeah, Tom Lehman, insurance magician. Sometimes I feel like I'm juggling everybody's balls in my hand. So yeah, that's a good explanation.
yep. And Edward, welcome. Glad you're on. Mike, you got a
Welcome,
good first.
Ed.
Yep, you got a first question for Colleen today, or
Yeah, let's see. I know that we've had a number of insurance companies that have pulled out of Florida, recently. I think that I don't know if that's because maybe you can tell us a little more about why that is, and is that behind why we have seen the large increases over the last couple of years, or what can you tell? Because I know that's one of the big things on people's minds as we're trying to manage our expenses, because we all need insurance, but it's been a challenge.
Oh yeah, exactly. So the reason a lot of the companies have left the state or went bankrupt is from litigation costs. It's not necessarily the claims. The insurance companies expect to pay claims, but they don't expect to pay litigation fees so frequently and so much. So, I don't think a lot of people understand that Florida had like 78% of homeowners insurance company litigations just from our state within the whole country. So it's starting to spread out to other states as well as the insurance crisis spreads. But the litigation costs from the roofing crisis, the cost of supplies and everything going up has affected the industry. It's not so much claims. And so when that happened, insurance companies went bankrupt, they left the state. In doing so, we're left with a very little pool of insurance companies left. So they all have to pay reinsurance costs, which is insurance to reinsure what they're insuring. As those costs increase to them, it has to get passed over to the consumer. Also, a lot of insurance companies have to limit their exposure, meaning they only going to write in certain areas. They may limit to certain ages of the homes and certain ages of the roof. So with that being said, we're left with certain companies to write in certain areas, and then certain areas and certain age homes are going to be more expensive. As we go through the next coming years and we get more companies to come in, the supply and demand will start to spread, and then that will in turn lower the rates.
Okay. Yeah, the surprising thing about that is I had not heard about the legal aspect before about is Florida just more sub
It's the litigation capital of the world, not only the
okay.
lightning capital, but also lawsuit capital in this state. I don't know if you notice all the law signs on the highway, especially on I-4, I got this much money. That doesn't help the situations that we have here.
Right.
Not to say lawyers are needed, everybody needs an attorney, but in every aspect, when people are starting to knock on doors and say, hey, we got your couple neighbors a new roof, we could probably get you a new roof, it immediately goes from, oh, that conversation turns to a public adjuster, and then public adjuster always, in most cases, sends their files to an attorney. So they have an attorney. Those legal costs are then passed over to the consumer's insurance company. So regardless of what they got paid to fix their roof, their water damage, there's legal fees. And the lawyers' legal fees are what, $300 an hour at least? They bill for everything, and the insurance company of the consumer has to pay those fees. So a claim that should be 20,000 is now 80.
Wow.
And this is happening times hundreds and 1,000. So it's a lot of expenses. So in some cases, some insurance companies are putting like arbitration clauses in their policy, and they're giving a customer a discount if they sign that, meaning they won't sue the insurance company. If they don't agree with the claim, they would give them the opportunity to go to a mediation. So, mediation would be somebody who's neutral, not an attorney. They're just going to get this claim settled once and for all on that day, not drag it out. And most times these lawsuits last a couple of years. So you may get your roof done, but it's going to take you a couple of years. And then you have a lawsuit on your hand, and you may have an issue getting a low price insurance in the future.
And all this applies to multifamily or commercial as well as
Be the
residential
same,
homes.
multifamily, residential, commercial properties, that's all being hit the same way. And the commercial insurance is really taking a price increase this year. Apartment buildings, commercial shopping centers, strip centers, those insurance, especially with wind, is like doubling or tripling, if not. So a lot of customers are opting to do other ways to insure their properties, maybe taking off wind coverage and things like that to make it more affordable for them.
Mhm. Yeah, we've noticed that. I was at a conference last week in Tampa, and
Mhm.
insurance came up because it's hard to underwrite something if you don't know what the costs are going to be going forward, and insurance is one of those big ones.
Yeah.
What are you thinking going forward? You said if more companies come in, of course, supply and demand takes
More
over, but yeah.
companies if we have a quiet storm season, but we've already had a couple tornadoes in the past couple weeks here. So, and it hasn't even hit June 1st. So, I think we have to stop saying, oh, if we have a quiet storm season, because we're in Florida, it's going to happen all the time. I just think it's finding ways to get more insurance companies to want to come here, and maybe putting some type of exclusions on the policy as such, to maybe the way they pay out roof claims and based on the age of the property. And then finding a way to cut back these lawsuits. But the commercial property increases, they've been going up over the past year, but it's really become really expensive in like now. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know how that's going to pan out in the next couple years, because it's all been all about the homeowners policy, the homeowners crisis. Now it's just an insurance crisis overall. And it's spreading to other states too. People are always complaining about not only the property insurance, but their auto insurance. I don't know if you've noticed, like, your personal auto policy, if you have a commercial auto policy, those are taking a huge hit. I mean, I think they went up 30% this year. And then last year they had went up too. So it's just overall, it's what they call the hard market. The underwriting is insane. I don't know if any of your commercial properties, you're getting underwriting memos for sidewalk cracks, tree limbs. I mean, they're always all over the tree limbs, but it's been more like they want every little tree limb cut back. If there's a crack on the sidewalk, they want to cancel your policy. So they're really expecting an influx of, personal injury lawsuits and things like that. So it's just when the economy gets rough and bad, people try to find ways to look for money. And unfortunately, insurance policies are one of those ways that people can get money.
Mhm.
So that's what I talk about, like educating the consumer. The consumer, we're the ones buying these products, paying for these policies. And in turn, the consumers are the ones that are putting claims in on their insurance policies or suing an insurance company. So when we start educating more or less about safety for ourselves and others, and property maintenance, maintaining your property, whether it be commercial or residential, we can start to, minimize some of these issues that occur that become a claim later on.
So what are some of the things that's, you mentioned, like cutting back tree limbs? I think of that as like, number one, I don't like trees that close to a property or close to the roof to begin with, or to the sides,
Yes.
the structure. So yeah, like removing potential trees that could fall on a property. I can see where that is one thing, but what are some of the other things we can do to cut down on the risk?
Oh, so you can cut back trees to make sure, obviously, they're not close to the house, overhanging the roof. Also, check your roof a couple times a year to make sure there's no missing shingles, no, because, missing shingles, one missing shingle can lead to others coming off. That could cause a problem. Also, if it's a rental property, rental units, if you can have somebody or your tenants check it every couple months to make sure there's no leaks on the inside. Because you can see on the outside, but if you're not inside, you can't see what's going on, to make sure there's no, water leaks on the ceiling, spots. Make sure that there's no intrusion coming in on the walls. And check the AC units to make sure that they're operating correctly. If you notice any water leak inside the house, it's coming from somewhere. So it's just being up to date and making sure that everything is safe and up to code. Also, as far as like sidewalk cracks, make sure if something looks loose, because the reason with a crack is somebody could fall. If they fall, they're going to get hurt. If they get hurt, they're going to probably file a liability lawsuit on the property owner. So that's the reason they're trying to mitigate that. Also, if you have steps on your property, I have had people who've had tenants fall on steps and they've sued them. I mean, and they broke their leg. Don't know why it's their fault. But if you have any type of steps on any type of property, you should have a handrail on at least one side. You need to have something for somebody to be able to grab onto. If they fall, I know these sometimes sound outlandish, but the outlandish things are what happens on a day-to-day basis. Also, if it's a commercial property, I saw this last week, a commercial convenience store, a car crashed into the wall. When it crashed into the wall, I posted about this. The husband's wife was in there working and she was knocked off the chair and she was in a coma. I'm not sure how she's doing now, but I noticed they didn't have those concrete poles that act as a barrier.
Yeah.
And this is like the third time I've seen that happen. So it would kind of prevent the car from crashing in. And this happens all the time. So because we're talking about commercial properties here, those are deterrents. You'd rather the car get damaged than your building, because your building could potentially have other people behind it who could get hurt. So these are all crazy like stories, but all of this happens in the aspect of it. And so we just need to educate and do our part in our small little way to help other people. In turn, the prices will start to come down for insurance, because it all goes back to insurance. Everything is money. And then people get money from insurance, as crazy as it sounds.
So I just want to break in just a bit here, Mike, and let Edward know if he's got questions to either pop them in the chat or unmute and jump in here, because we all have questions for you today, Colleen. So.
Hey,
Yep, there you
Ed.
are. Yep.
Hey, how's it going, Colleen?
Good. How are you with your fancy mic?
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
You have any questions, Ed?
No, not at the moment. I will probably come up with something though, I'll think.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I got some deals coming up.
Yep. So if we're anticipating trying to underwrite a property to make a purchase, Colleen, and insurance is X right now, what's your guess on plus 1 year, plus 2 years, plus 3 years out? What are we looking to be able to pop those numbers in a spreadsheet and get an idea if we can make the property work?
Okay, so 3 years out is kind of far, but I would be happy to think in 3 years the rates are going to be lower. Now they're never going to go back down to the prices that they were like before COVID, because it was cheap then. And I always say before COVID because around COVID is when things started to get really bad insurance wise. The prices and the roof claims, and they just slowly crept up since then, and they haven't come down. So I don't think they're going to go back down to like the rates that they were previously. However, I think they're going to go back down to what they were a couple of years ago. So it's just still going to be higher, but lower than what they are. And so I would think maybe 20 to 30% lower than what they are now. Because right now, rates have gone up 30%. per year. And it's been like 2 to 3 years. So we can get it back down to what they were 2020, 2021. It'll be, a lot more affordable and a lot more reasonable. And then it also depends on the, commercial space too. You always have to think about the higher the premium is because you're including wind and hurricane, because they're expecting the wind and hurricane to be the largest losses. But I will tell you, in the past week, the losses I've had have been from fire. So fire is one of the loss that people always tend to like think won't happen, but it's the biggest loss that could happen.
Mhm.
And then in the event, we have to think about if there's a fire, somebody could be injured, and they could die, and that's a large liability claim. So I wouldn't say you should not insure your property altogether, because I've had people say, oh, we can self-insure. Well, self-insure means you have no coverage at all. I don't ever recommend that, especially on a commercial property. You always need liability, the highest amount that's affordable to you and your business partners. I would never forego fire insurance, because that's a large loss. And if it's an income producing property, if there's a fire, most likely it's not going to be habitable. So you want to make sure you're able to repair it, get it rehabilitated so you can continue to make money. Most likely a hurricane loss isn't going to make the property not habitable for every unit in there, especially in, multi-units. Also, hurricane deductibles and wind are higher out-of-pocket expense. So not only do you have to pay the higher premium, you got to pay the deductible out of your pocket in the event that that storm happens and your property has an actual loss. So there's a lot of ways that, and it can get really complicated, and I'm always happy to discuss everybody's situation on their case, but it gets more complicated. But there's ways to think about it in a rational sense that makes sense, for everybody to be profitable and still be able to be insured.
Mhm. Yeah, Mike, you and I were talking yesterday about, you might change your deductibles to get it to be more cost effective right now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, because it's like nobody wants to turn in a claim. It's like, say you have some water damage or something and you've got a $5,000 claim. Do you want to, I mean, is that going to impact all of your other policies? You don't want to turn in a claim for 5,000 and have all your other policies go up 1,000, and next thing you know, you're behind. So
How does that work,
Right.
Colleen? Yep.
yeah, so
Yeah, I
how
mean,
would you recommend it?
it would affect, it depends what name your policy was in and which insurance company you're putting it with. So if it's in like your personal name, the claim, was in your personal policy, it would affect, because anytime they pull like a claim report, it's going to pull up. And so the claims are normally not specific, depending on the insurance company, to that particular property. It's specific to the named insured. So, if you're a homeowner and it's your one home that you own, a claim like that may be a big expense to them. So obviously put it in. But I had a client who had a water claim, and he didn't tell me. He wanted me to write the policy on his home so he could save, money, $900. So I was like, well, I think you should just keep what you have, because this isn't that much of a savings to go through this and get the money back. Oh, I want to do it. We did it. He didn't tell me he had a water claim. Then the policy went up to more than what he was paying, but he got paid on that water claim $762. That wasn't worth it for him, because he had a $2,500 out-of-pocket expense. I mean, was $762? That kind of seemed like something to me he could have repaired on his own, because now he wanted to get a new policy, and it made the premium go up. So it did affect him. In some cases, especially with, water claims, companies don't like that, because water claims become big issues. They turn into mold if they're not, tended to. So a lot of companies limit that coverage. So some may only pay 10,000 on a commercial policy. They may limit it to 100,000, depending on how much it's insured for, because water claims a lot of times end up in legal matters. So it goes to litigation costs money, because it's always like, oh, we got to repair this, this, and this. It goes on from just that one area. So it really depends on what it is. That's why I said property maintenance is key. If you notice something, say something, because if something's noticed, there's something going on there.
Mhm.
Oh, you see, now you also mentioned fire, and it brought to mind that, yeah, like in the apartments, we've had tenants that had fires in the kitchen. Next thing you know,
Right.
you have $10,000 of damage, and you can't rent the unit out until it's fixed. But
Right.
one of the things we like to do is require tenants to have their own renter's insurance. Is that something you carry, and does that help? I would imagine that would help a property owner from having to file their claims.
Okay, so it's good to have your tenants get renter's insurance because renter's insurance protects them and their items, their contents, their clothing, their computers, their bedding, all of that. It doesn't necessarily protect your property because they don't own your property. So but it does provide them liability coverage. So it really depends on what the fire started. Were they careless? Well, I mean, careless isn't really an insured loss, but they have to be negligent to put it on their liability. So I said it's good to have them get it, but it doesn't necessarily protect your property. It just provides liability coverage to them for what they're held liable for. So we can go into a little further. If there was a fire in the property, they had a friend over who got smoke inhalation, got sick, and sued them. Well, they have liability coverage. So the liability issue would go to their policy first before it went to yours. So that's the reason why you would want them to have it. But it wouldn't take the place of you having property insurance and repair your property.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to, it's more, I was thinking from the standpoint of having them file with their insurance instead of us having to file with ours.
Correct. That would be nice, but it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that easy. Okay.
Mhm. Right.
So then it comes down to whether we want to make the repairs and not report it or file and, yeah.
Right. And that's like a case by case basis. How much damage? How long is it going to take to repair? Was anybody hurt? Is another unit damaged? If it's a small kitchen fire and it's something that can be taken care of in a couple of days, couple $1,000s, you may not want to do that because that's going to be on your history forever. But if it's something big, I mean, that's what you pay the insurance to help you repair in something like that.
So you were talking about how we need to educate consumers, or as an insurance industry, you want to educate the consumers. So how do we explain to the tenants why they need to have renter's insurance?
Okay. Because if something were to happen to their items, so if they come home from work one day and their unit was ransacked and everything's stolen or damaged or broken, if they don't have renter's insurance, they don't have any coverage for it. They're gonna call you and say, because I've had this happen on the weekends, I've had a client call with their tenant on the other line. Oh, can my policy cover their stuff? No, you don't own their stuff. You don't have an insurable interest in their contents. So the reason they want it is to be responsible and protect their items in the case something happens to it, whether it's fire damage, smoke, water, break-in, hurricane, anything like that. And your leases state we're not, responsible for any of your personal items. Unless, and then there's some other, liability type issues that could go on the property owner. If the tenant had called you numerous times or the property management, hey, there's a major leak in here. I need somebody to come over. And it was like not tended to. Or I think the face could burn down because it's been sparking when I do this. It's things, but you're responsible, so if somebody calls you or your property management, you're going to go tend to it. But, not all property owners are responsible. They just want the money and they're not going to be, responsible and repair or go tend to something right away. So that's what I'm talking about, educating in general, educating, you own the property, you're responsible for it. Your tenant doesn't own, but they are responsible for what they do. If they leave something out and somebody trips on it in the yard, they left it out. So, having them have liability coverage and, renter's insurance, because it comes with it, it's providing protection to you for what they do wrong. You can't be there all the time, to babysit them.
That's right.
And
Right.
what's the cost of renter's insurance? I know it'll depend
Oh,
on how
I
much
mean,
they
in
have,
most
but
cases,
yeah.
it's like a couple $100s a year. I mean, if maybe a little bit more, depending on the area and how much content they want to cover. And in most cases, they don't have to pay that in full. They can do it on a monthly basis, quarterly. So there's options for them. Some cases, their car insurance, they can add it in with that policy and pay it monthly. So there's options for them to get insured.
Mhm. And I know there's sometimes a way to recommend a certain insurer to tenants and
Yeah, and in most cases, I have some like property management companies that will just provide them like a list. Or if they don't know, if you don't know anybody, I can refer you to some people who can help you, or check with your auto insurance to see if that's something that they offer. It's not saying, oh, you have to use them, because you can't do that. But if they don't know or they ask you, you can certainly, refer them.
mhm. Yep. So one of the key things I'm aware of on my portfolio is roofs and the requirement that roofs get replaced perhaps more quickly than I would want to replace them. What's happening with that? Ultimately,
Right.
we all like a new roof on our house, but what's going on with that? What are the insurance
Yeah, we all
companies?
would like a new roof, every 10 years, but you may not need it every 10 years. And so it goes back to the education and maintenance, and on both sides, the consumer and the insurance company. So the insurance company is just trying to protect themselves. So they're saying some of them are limiting like the age of the roof. I've seen some that want the roofs to be 10 years and newer. Well, that's not really realistic. 20 years and newer is kind of more like it. But the new thing is in the last couple years is to have at least 5 years of life left, meaning it can be 20 years old, but as long as it has 5 years of life left and it's in good condition. So there are some roofs that are 10 years old that are not in good condition. They were poorly done, they weren't permitted, or they were just done incorrectly. So it's about, having a permit and a licensed person do your roof, or have a receipt shows that you've paid somebody to do it. And then the permit means that it was signed off from the county, somebody or the city. Somebody looked at it and said that this was done correctly. It's to make sure that it's done correctly so it prevents leaks or issues happening in your house, but also protects it. Also, our state is so hot. The sun is brutal here. So roofs that are supposed to last 20 or 30 years may not. And then some may. It also depends on how you care for it. There are some treatments now that after 5 to 7 years of the roof age, they say you can start applying it, which makes the roof more pliable, because after it sits and it gets a little dry, it gets brittle. And then that's how they start cracking and peeling off. And it's not able to withstand the heat, the wind, or the rain, or the hail. So there's several different companies who do that coating. It's not meant to give your roof life like act as a replacement barrier, meaning it's a maintenance. So like you maintain your AC unit, you maintain your, car, vehicle, oil changes, tires, wiper blades, and things like that. It's starting to become more popular for people to start maintaining their roofs and realize that, your roof sits up there, it does a big job for you. Now we got to start paying some attention to it. We clean our house, but people don't really think about the roof except for when, oh, someone knocks on the door and I can get a new roof for free. So it's just kind of reversing that. But then also think, I know like the cost of roofs are really expensive now too, like the cost of supplies and everything. But I wonder if that has to do with the insurance claim payout process too. Because sometimes it's like, oh, are you going through insurance? It's this much. If you're paying cash, it's cheaper, and I think that's kind of become a big problem as well. Like, does a roof really cost 30,000 to get done? Or does it cost 16? Because I know on my own home, I got quotes and one was 30 and 16. Well, how is it twice the price? If I have insurance and if I'm paying out of cash, it's half the price. I
It's like
always wonder that.
with deeper pockets is going to be paying the bill, then they will.
Right.
Higher price.
But then why is the insurance company paying the higher amount too?
Yeah,
And that's part of the problem. So like I blame the whole system is a problem. People blame the contractors. Well, the contractors are, individuals that are working, so they're going to take what they can get. So I blame the contractors, the roofers, the lawyers, the insurance, and the insurance company at the top, because they're the ones that are steering the ship per se. And it's got to stop. Instead of saying, and then, because the insurance companies, a lot of times when claims would come in, they would just say no right away. Well, when you tell somebody no, and then, there's no like discussion back, that person's going to say, okay, I'm just going to get an attorney right away. And then they end up paying it. So maybe if it was like a little discussion and a payment settle the claim before, they wouldn't go that route and they wouldn't have to pay so much money. Because as soon as they get an attorney, they're eventually going to pay it. It's just a matter of when. They're
Yeah.
going to pay, and they're going to pay more, but it's just going to take more time.
So anything in particular, I mean, this is a commercial group normally, and most of the people will be watching this or that. Any kinds of things back to the particularly apartments, since that's what Mike and I do, that we need to be aware of? Is it, I mean, yeah, what are some things come to mind for you that we need to be
For
interested
commercial
in?
properties, so obviously it's the same. I mean, property insurance and property maintenance and property care preservation is the same. Regardless, it's just commercials got more doors. So you got more people who are probably bothering you, calling you, and tenants, and to handle. So it's the same. It's maintaining it, keeping it safe. Commercial properties, I know they want, making sure that there's no hazard. So checking the batteries and the smoke detectors. I mean, I've seen claims denied for that. Fire claims. Luckily nobody got killed or anything, but it's a simple task. So just make a checklist of punch sheets for your tenants, maybe to get, have them go through, whether it's an apartment building, a commercial store or shopping center, commercial office buildings, like to make them aware of things that you're going to do or that you want them to do every couple months. Check and make sure there's no leaks or there's no this or that going on. Have people that maybe go do drive-bys and check the outside to make sure there's no large tree branches in the yard, no shingles off the roof, no broken windows, all of these things that we see that the insurance companies are going out to, kind of prevent losses from happening, but they don't go out every month and they don't own the property, but it's just preventing things before they happen. And then if something does happen, well, you've got your backup. I was going out there every other month. I was going out there every 6 months to check it. I had my property manager go, here's my lead sheets that I have my tenants. It's backing up and keeping yourself aware and informed. Because
I would
Go
imagine
ahead,
you
Mike.
can take pictures when you go by also to
Oh,
document.
yeah. Take pictures because, the pictures aren't going to lie. You have a date and time in your phone and save them or put them in a file to show when you went out there. Because if a tree could fall at any time and, the tree wasn't dead before, it's green and now it's fell on the house, or somebody fell in the yard and they said this was there. Well, look, I went there a couple weeks ago and it was clear. So you just want to show that you're maintaining your property, that you're not like an absentee owner. And that goes for any type of property.
Mhm.
Good idea.
When again, we're in the buying phase on something, can we get an idea of what insurance might be from somebody like you if we're looking at a 20 unit or a 50 unit or something like that before we buy?
You can get an indication. If so, the best way to get like the most accurate quote is to have like the information, how many units it is, if there's any amenities like pools, laundry rooms, playgrounds, anything like that. What type of tenants you have, if it's like an elderly one, community or a sober living, because I have seen those transitional housing, or if it's just Section 8, because these are all questions that the insurance companies ask. And then after we clear that out, I can kind of give you more indication of how much it would be. Then whether you're going to want hurricane coverage to be included. So like I say, the closer it is to the water and the older the property, the harder it is to get wind. More inland, newer block construction is going to be easier to get wind and less expensive.
Mhm. So one of the places is when we're underwriting before buying, and we could call somebody like you and say, could you give us an idea? Because we're trying to put it in our spreadsheet to see what it's going to cost. And then during due diligence itself to line up the insurance. So it's there at closing.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
And both would require that basic information, location and construction.
Yeah,
and
I
age
mean,
and-
the address is key because it helps us, because I can look up anything, with an address and kind of underwrite it myself.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say, without an address, or you don't know the address. If you kind of know the area, I can kind of estimate how much it would be, kind of going off some other quotes that I have.
Yeah, that would be helpful as we're looking at a particular geographic area. In our acquisition phase of our work is to know if we bought in Daytona or if we bought in Eustis,
Right.
that it might be this or that, as we're doing the pencil work to decide whether to buy or not. Good one. Thank you.
You're
And,
welcome.
are there differences? I mean, you're a broker, an insurance broker. Was that the right word versus you represent one company like a?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a broker, so I don't work with just one company.
Mm-hmm. And how do you search for companies? What are you searching for?
Well, I have a lot of like brokerage houses that I use. So basically, if you come to me with a commercial property, I'm just going to gather the information, prepare applications, and shoot it out. So I don't really limit who I send it to. I just will send it to everybody because everybody's got their own markets and their own rates. To try and get you the most competitive offers.
Mhm.
How we look for companies is I'm always searching. Like I think this past week I picked up 3 companies. I have this big account that I'm going to be getting that's just going to give me a lot more carriers. So I'm always looking for other means to get new companies for clients, with products that I can offer. The only problem is a lot of them will take you, but they're limited to what they're writing. So in some aspects, it's good for new homes because, everybody wants new homes, brand new construction, but the older ones are where we kind of suffer.
Sure.
So it's just finding more niches. And then if, like I said, more companies need to come here and they need to open more markets, especially in the commercial space. Like I said, we're talking about personal lines all over the place. We're going to get 8 new companies, but no one's talked about commercial.
Sure.
So,
Well, we do the same
mhm.
with getting financing. We're going to look in some banks and some others will loan in a certain area and others won't. And so it's very similar to that, but
Right,
yep. And we get a broker to go find the best one for that. So
right.
that's a good one. When we get a claim, that's one of my questions, Mike. When we get a claim, what do we do? What do we do? What do you suggest? Would
Yeah,
you
are
call
you referring?
call the insurer, forget about
When
it?
you have a claim, either call the insurance company if you have that information. If you don't, call the agent, and just make sure you have all the information, what happened, when it happened, the address. And if you have any other pertinent information, if you got a police report number, if there was, that, um, if you got any photographs, pictures, receipts for repairs, any statements, anything like that, just send it because what we do, if we receive that information, we just send it on to the insurance company. And like I told somebody last week, they were calling, they had trees down. Well, when can somebody get out here? And I was like, well, I don't know, but they're not coming out to repair your property. So I think that's like something maybe like years ago, 40 years ago, the insurance company would come out and help you, repair your property. But now everything's so overpopulated and so many people, they don't do that. So they're coming out to just assess your damage, take pictures, look at it, take some statements, and then turn that information into the insurance company. And then the person that's coming out to look at the damages isn't the one that's going to be writing your check. So they're just doing their job. It's a whole system. And, the average claim takes about 4 months.
Hmm.
And I know people are always shocked. It used to be 2, now it's longer. And there's like no urgency. Years ago, the claims adjusters were working overtime. They'd work on the weekends. I'm telling you, as soon as it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, you won't hear anything from anybody at an insurance company, except for some of the brokers that I deal with. Because they're all like smaller, companies like mine, and they're always working really hard. But some of these large insurance companies, there's nobody going to be doing anything. And there may be a way to report a claim 24 hours, but nobody's going to really come out there until working days.
Mhm.
So it's our jobs as consumers and agents to, educate people to prevent anything else from happening. So if you have a roof leak, put a tarp over it to prevent anything else from getting into the home.
So I heard you two things, just timeliness, go ahead and report quickly. And two is completeness, gather and document everything
Correct.
you can as quickly as you can, and then work with your agent to
And that's why I said, like, all of your documentation that you have before, from like any inspections on your property, going over there to check it, any pictures always come into play too. Because, they could go like, oh, this was like that before. It was existing damage. And it's always to backing up yourself. No, I have proof that this was good before and this happened, so you sometimes in this day and age, you may need to show backup for how it was before the loss happened.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, that's a good, just has what. So it sounds like, and I heard before, one of the first things, you want to protect the property. So obviously if you have storm damage, let's just say a tree falls on the roof, you got a hole in the roof, you need to protect it, you need to get that tree off the roof. That happens on a weekend, on a Friday. Take pictures, get somebody out there to get the tree off the roof, and take
Yes.
pictures to document it. But yes, protect the property. And as far as when you can start making repairs, I would imagine you want to go ahead and start doing those right away, and but make sure you contact the insurance company right away so that they can get involved as needed.
Correct. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So.
And Mike, perhaps, and Colleen, without others on to ask different questions, we're 45 minutes in. We've had a lot of good information today. I think we've overdone what I expected to get done today. Are there any wrap-up things, Mike, for you or for Colleen that you see?
I can't think of any other questions. I mean, are there any other takeaways or important points you think you would want everybody to know?
I just want to continue to educate about, property maintenance, property education, about what your duties are as an insured, as a homeowner, as any type of property owner, about being, responsible and maintaining it. And also, to protect, yourself, like I said, pictures and everything like that. Also, shop around to see what other rates are out there for you. And just know what's going on, know what your policy covers and what it doesn't cover. So when you come to the point where you have a loss, if something's not covered, you're not shocked.
There you go.
That's what I run into a lot, telling
yeah.
people, well, yeah. So it's just further, and it's always an ongoing conversation. And if there's any topics, like I said, I'm always willing to talk to anybody. I don't charge anything. So if they have questions, they want to go over something, obviously, I'll take my time to review and explain anything to anybody.
Good. Why don't we get some contact information? A phone number, the best thing, Colleen, or what?
Yeah, phone and email. I prefer phone and email. I know some people love to text. I will give my public disclaimer. Text is like my least favorite.
Mhm.
Text is going to be the last thing I reply to because we're on the phone so heavy here, and email. So my phone is 407-559-2200. And then my email is Colleen, COLLEEN at securedinsurancegrp.com. And it's all on my website, on my socials. So I do text, but like I said, it's going to be later in the day that I reply. Unless you're my kid or something, he's going to get priority. But so I just do my best to reply to everybody within 24 hours. So,
There you go.
yep.
This has been great.
Thank
Really
you.
great. Appreciate your time, and I know others will when we get this out to them. Mike,
Yeah, it's
anything
really
on
good
the,
information. Hmm.
on the wrap up?
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. That was, we really appreciate you coming on here today, and
Thank you for having
great
us.
points in discussion.
Yep, and we're back
Mm-hmm.
on, we're back on with a variety of ways of addressing multifamily folks the third Wednesday of every month at noon, just for an hour. And this has been really good today. Colleen, thanks again, and
Thank
fight
you,
your way
guys.
through that grass behind you there to get back to it.
I'll get back and climb through my saddle. Thank
There
you.
you
You
go.
guys
Okay,
have a
thank
great
you.
day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
thanks.
Bye-bye.